let's talk about the different layers of the ball, starting from the core to the cover. So kind of got it laid out a little bit over here as 2-piece, 3-piece, 4-piece, and insert TP5 here. So let's start with the core as a very basic to give you a better understanding of how the composition of the ball actually makes a major difference in the game. Once upon a time back in the 90s and before that, they used to go and say you want higher spin, less distance, play a 3-piece ball, that's a 90 compression. You want more distance, less spin, play a 2-piece ball, that's 100 compression. That stuff doesn't exist anymore because, again, yesteryear's balls are pretty much gone. Once we went to solid core and the modern technology that we've been using to it today, we've pretty much been able to replicate the same cover performance of a Balata without the horrible hook spins and stuff that you get out of it, where it just goes 100 yards out and takes a right turn at Albuquerque. But I digress from all that. I could go into a whole tangent. The reason the core size matters. So Srixon has probably the largest core you could possibly get when it comes to a ball. The reason they do that is they have a super thin cover and a super thin mantle if they have it. Off the top of my head, the Z-Stars usually have a 1.48 millimeter thick cover and mantle. When you cut them open, it almost doesn't even look like the Q-Star 2 or the Z-Stars actually have a mantle because they are that thin and interact that much. You're getting the most maximized performance out of the interaction of the core. Having a larger core to it is a better transfer of energy. So when you hit rubber, obviously it's going to want to rebound and react to it. Physics dictates when you impact that ball, that energy is going to shoot from one end of the ball and go through the other. The more layers that you have, the harder you have to hit it to start interacting with the different layers. Hence the reason why the TP5 has 5 layers, because it's supposed to give you total game interaction with a similar performance in brackets, from your fairway woods and driver to your long irons, mid irons, to your short irons and wedges. And that's kind of the best way I've always been able to try to explain it and look at it, as the more layers that you have in the ball is the more brackets that you're starting to add to it that's going to give you different interactions. 2-piece is going to have, for the most part, a large core to it that's going to give you an explosive amount of energy for the reaction to give you your distance. Because you're lacking the mantle or a secondary core, you're kind of losing out a little bit of the spin interaction. That's where you start getting things like the Tri-Fly and the Q-Star and stuff in there, is they start to go and add in the different layers to it to start to give you a little bit more spin interaction. The dual core is going to be more focused on your interaction of long irons and woods and stuff, because it's going to give you a secondary core to interact with higher impacts. That's going to keep the spin lower, shooting the energy more through it in a slightly different way, because the inner core is generally going to be softer than your outer core. There's going to be a weird dispersion of how the energy is going to go across the ball. That's going to dictate a little bit of a loss of spin, which is going to give you a little bit more of a different trajectory. That's going to give you more run out and give you longer distances. But then you go to the mantle and the cover, that's going to give you your short game performance. It's going to go into that. Why does that matter? It really doesn't. Just understand that this is their way of trying to tinker with a small layer of things to give you a different performance. They're all trying to accomplish the same thing with a different idea. Now, where it starts getting a little bit tricky, and yes, it does and doesn't matter in some aspects, is the 3-piece balls. You're gonna see things like the Bridgestone E6, that's gonna tell you you're gonna have lower side spin with straighter flight and better performance out of that. How are they doing that? They're actually doing it with the 3-piece ball. Most 3-piece balls use a Surlyn or ionomer mantle, which is going to be the same as the cover of these cheaper balls here. It's a denser, harder material that's going to just shoot that energy through it as soon as it gets hit. When you have less oomph into it because you're not hitting it as hard, which is why it interacts better with your wedges, short irons, and mid irons to give you that spin, that energy is essentially reverberating through the mantle, and it's going to go back and a bunch of other things and stuff. That's how it's going to start triggering the different types of spin on full shots. Yes, the cover is going to dictate a little bit more on how it's going to have the traction to the face, The same thing as treads on a tire, because you're going to have the interaction of the grooves versus the bumps and everything that's on the dimples. We'll get that in a little bit. But the point of what I'm trying to say is they're able to kind of fine tune and tweak the different parts of the ball. That's going to give you a slightly different performance. Going to with the two-piece, it's going to basically be pure energy transfer. That's going to give you lower spin because it's trying to basically reshape itself and interact and trying to get it back into shape and go out. That's why Srixon actually keeps with a thinner cover and a thinner mantle, because you gain that two-piece distance performance basically just shooting it off the face, which is why Srixon actually has a lower ball flight as well as the dimple pattern versus other brands. You go and look at the TP5, they took that and basically expanded on, again, back to the brackets. We're going to break it down into different layers to go and give you the different performance. Actually, let me explain that a little bit better. Let's start with two-piece. Two-piece has two brackets. You got cover, you got core. Core is going to be most interactive when it comes to 7-iron up. I'm just picking a random club. And then the cover is going to be more interactive with your 8-iron down. You add in that third layer to it. You just added a middle bracket in there. Now you're going to have your wedges, short irons that are going to be more interactive with, say, the cover and mantle. And then you're going to go into, you know, say 8-iron up to 4-iron. That's going to be that middle bracket that's going to be interacting partially with the mantle and the core. And then you go into your fairway woods and long irons and driver and stuff. That's where that's all going to be dictated with the interaction of mostly the core, because you're compressing more of the ball that's getting more of a reaction out of the inside of it. You add in a fourth layer to it, you just added in another bracket. Now you got your fairway woods, your driver, your long irons are going to be in their own with a, you know, 5-iron or so. Then you got your mid. You kind of get where I'm going with this. Every single time that you add a layer to it, you're adding a different bracket that's going to be interacting with a different part. The TP5 becomes interesting in this because the most unusual performance that I've seen off of a ball was the TP5. It either works for you or it doesn't, because they're trying to streamline this effect across the entire spectrum of your bag. It's essentially the same flight off of every single club, but when you go down, you're interacting more with the outer layers, which is going to start interacting with the spin. That's where that little niche starts to come in. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of a better understanding of the different layers of the golf ball. Hopefully I didn't go a bit on too much of a tangent or a runaway sentence, that it actually gave you a good understanding to it. If you actually gain some information out of this, or you want me to be able to clarify a little bit better, please leave a comment down below. Please like and subscribe. Follow me, because I'm definitely going to be making a lot more videos discussing basically the makeup and how the golf balls affect things, and eventually into the clubs and irons. Hopefully, again, this actually was informative. Keep it in the fairway. Have a good one.